After the middling to broken releases of Sonic Colors Ultimate and Origins, Sega returns to remaster one of their old Sonic titles. This time it's Generations. But it's a mostly vanilla port without any major changes from the original. No, the big selling point here is the entirely new game Shadow Generations to coincide with his cinematic debut in Sonic 3. But as much as I want to talk about that game, dessert will have to come another day, since in all my years of making videos, I've never really talked about the original Generations, despite completing it twice. So let's fix that today. Released 13 years ago to coincide with the character's 20th anniversary, Generations is all about modern Sonic and classic Sonic going through different stages from their past iconic mainline titles, from the original all the way up to Colors, which was still a recent Wii exclusive at the time. This may say more about me and where my headspace is at, but it's insane to think that this game is over a decade old. I remember playing the demo on my 360 a million times and watching so many reviews, just wishing I could play this for myself. And when I did on the same console years later, I was not disappointed whatsoever. I didn't really keep up to date with the Sonic franchise, hell, I still don't, and the same goes with the general consensus of the fanbase. So my enjoyment with Generations was not due to it relieving some disappointment I'd had with 06 or Unleashed. No, all that came later. It's even harder to believe that Generations is from 2011, considering how fun it still is. The sheer sense of speed felt in the modern Sonic levels, juxtaposed with the fun platforming in the classic levels, gives the best of two worlds to a franchise that was pretty fractured at that point in time. Not counting bosses, there's about 18 levels split into 8 acts, giving one to each Sonic. I particularly appreciate how the levels feel like advanced recreations of the source material, like modern Sonic's City Escape or classic Sonic's Chemical Plant, while the other act feels like an entirely new level, only inspired by the concept of what came before. With an amount of polish that, frankly, has never been seen before in this franchise. I love these games, but they are janky as shit, and that just sort of gives it an edge above its source material, as good as those older games may be. There's only a few levels that I can think of that don't hit the mark for me at all, mainly Sky Sanctuary and Planet Wisp. But that same general design philosophy goes for the music as well. I don't think it's wrong for me to say that Sonic is almost built off of the back of its music. It's so fucking transcendent, if that's the word I want to use. However, as much as we all love the character, I don't think we'd really enjoy just hearing the same tracks over again, so iconic themes are instead reimagined, like Green Hill Zone or Seaside Hill, into completely new renditions that fit the musical styles of each Sonic in a way that doesn't really compromise on their experience. And I can't really think of any piece of music that does not hit. Maybe classic Crisis City? I don't know. It all comes together to make an almost entirely new game that works even if you haven't played the titles that it's based on, which is sort of surprising for a story that's entirely built off of nostalgia. The actual narrative is very paper thin. Some monster called the Time Eater destroys classic Sonic's world and crashes modern Sonic's birthday party. I always wondered why classic Sonic wasn't having a birthday party. Like Knuckles exists. Chaotix exists. Amy, he has friends. Why isn't he having a fucking birthday party? Regardless of how lonely classic Sonic is, the Time Eater scatters modern Sonic's friends across white space, which is a sort of limbo, forcing both classic and modern Sonic to work together to stop the mysterious monster thing, which is just another Eggman plot. No shit. But the difference this time around is that it's both him and Dr. Robotnik working together, and they're fucking hilarious. It's a real shame that they don't have much screen time together at all, and that sort of goes for the entire cast. I feel like most Sonic stories post 06 are pretty by the numbers, which is fine, but the lack of meaningful character interactions is sort of what makes this story disappointing. Especially for a game that's not just another Sonic entry, it's a celebration of the 20th anniversary. So for Tails to get the most voice lines in the original game is a bit off-putting. Thankfully, this is one of the few things that the remaster does update, regardless of how minuscule it really is. I know I said Generations Remastered is a vanilla port, and it is for the most part, but there are some additions. A new control scheme meant to emulate Frontiers with the option to switch to the original button layout. The live system has been completely removed in order to align with the rest of the modern Sonic games. It's neither here nor there. There's a new hidden Chow system, and I'm not entirely sure what it does despite showing a little Chow next to you for a little bit after you find it. That's about it. There's save files now, thank God. Every game needs save files. I don't know why we completely got rid of this in the 2010s. And most importantly, up-resed cutscenes with completely rewritten dialogue and sometimes redone animation. Some of this is done to improve in the original, like modern Sonic actually interacting with his friends after saving them, as opposed to just giving a fucking awkward thumbs up. However, there are also changes to make Generations fit into modern continuity, mostly with references to previous games, like Sonic and Tails actually remembering Green Hill Zone and Chemical Plant this time, which never made sense in the original that they completely forgot about it. A one-off reference to Sonic CD, as well as the complete rewrite for Amy. Originally, Amy was completely head over heels for Sonic, and that was sort of her entire character for decades, until she was apparently changed in IDW. I've never read the comics yet, and that eventually trickled into the games, giving the two a more mellowed, even relationship, rather than Amy just being a literal stalker. In Generations, that means that she's just another one of Sonic's friends, complete with remade cutscenes to coincide with this change. I think this is completely fine. That whole shtick of her being just a fucking creep was old by the time that we got to Heroes and was beaten to death as the years went on. But apparently this is a contentious change for some reason. This isn't like the rival battles and Colors Ultimate or DLC for a 30-year-old game like in Origins. Sonic Team seems to have been making a conscious effort to make recent games feel like a continuous franchise rather than a scattered web of titles like it used to feel. How this is a problem is really beyond me. The actual issues with Generations Remastered are mostly the same as the original. I really don't fucking like Planet Wisp, man. I didn't struggle with it as much as some people did, but it just does not capture the fun of Colors at all. The classic one sucks, the modern one sucks, he stinks, and I don't like him. Maybe I'm not an S-rank Sonic gamer man that hasn't reached his peak, but the skills have never really offered any major assistance in any of my playthroughs. The additional challenges are fine. Some are great, like the races, that feels very natural for a Sonic game, while lots of others feel like they were just added to pad out what's, frankly, a very short game. Why in the hell are there 90 of these things? Thankfully, you only need 10 to get to the end of the story, and while I appreciate that there's options for which challenge you'd like to complete, I only wish that the work that was put towards making the extra 80 was instead directed towards new levels based off of spin-off games, or even ironing out the boss fights, because man, they're almost as hit or miss as the challenge levels here. Granted, half of them are fun. Metal Sonic, Silver, and Shadow stand out as the best of the bunch to me, and others like Death Egg Robot just sort of suck, while the rest sit somewhere in the middle. Perfect Chaos is actually a boss I like less the more that I play it. It's just a set piece that's sort of required to be completed as fast as it can be, without really thinking about it as an actual level, especially since stopping it all sort of fucks you over entirely. And the final boss with the Time Eater, you just hold square, man. It works great on a first playthrough, not so much on a third. That's not to say that the remaster is perfect. Visually, there's some hiccups. From everything that I've seen, it seems like that the textures and the lighting are exactly the same as the original. Instead, after literally putting both games side by side, it seems like there was some bloom added to the remaster, which might be hit or miss for some people. There's also some pop-in that wasn't present at all in the original. Granted, it's mainly when booting up a level for the first time, and it's only for like a millisecond, so most people aren't going to notice it, and it's nowhere near as gruesome as Colors Ultimate. Also, it feels like a lot of the glitches were ironed out of this remaster. I was playing base Generations the other day, and it was It was fucking rough. However, if you've been on this channel at any point in time, then you'll know exactly what the fuck I'm about to complain about right now. The worst part of Generations isn't the remaster itself, but how Sega handled its release as a replacement for the original. With its decent amount of changes and an entirely separate game included in the package, there's no lie that Sonic Shadow Generations is an almost separate experience from the original game, and yet the latter was delisted to entice everyone to buy the new shiny thing. This isn't new for Sega. They did the same thing when Origins came out, but there I could at least excuse the fact that some of those games had been released countless times, even on newer hardware. Except the Sega Genesis and Dreamcast collections are being delisted as soon as December 6th. So that's just not the case anymore. Re-releases are meant to aid in preservation, making many games, new and old, available on more systems, preventing them from being forgotten by time. Not as a tool to make games more scarce to entice everyone to play a different game. And if there aren't any licenses expiring or legal deals barring availability, then a game should not be artificially made more difficult to find. It's bullshit. As minute as the changes are to me, other fans should have the ability to choose which experience is for them. I don't think it's ridiculous that someone uninterested in Shadow Generations or someone who doesn't have a modern system should still be able to play Generations. As much as I try to be fair and give credit to Sega where it's due, this is completely inexcusable, and no amount of including it in a bundle on Steam will clean this up, despite it changing the minds of some fans. Man, that stuff aside, I do think that the Sonic Shadow Generations release is a good deal, if a bit of a hard sell for $50, if you're not excited for Shadow's portion. Especially since the remaster itself is mostly just the same game from 2011, just available for the first time on PS5 and Switch, since the Xbox and PC copies were already playable. Fucking not anymore. But since it is the same game, it's still an overall great experience that everyone should own a copy of, hardcore Sonic fan or not. And for a Black Friday deal of only $30, this is a steal. I haven't even talked about Shadow Generations yet. That game's a whole other fucking can of worms. The changes aren't intrusive, and there's no game-breaking bugs or anything, so that's at least comforting. This isn't a re-release that requires lowered expectations or complete ignorance of what could have been. It's a good remaster. End of story. And let me tell you, the rest of the package makes up for that asking price tenfold. While there's still clearly lots of room for improvement, hopefully Sega's future remasters will be more like this, rather than their past mistakes. Sonic Adventure 2 still crashes on my PC to this day, a 24-year-old game. It's almost fucking impressive. Don't forget to share this video to the PlayStation 3 store before it gets delisted by Sega.
Adventure ever in a race to save the world as you experience the speed of light. But when darkness falls, Sonic transforms into a fierce fighting werehog with the power of night. Sonic Unleashed, out now.